Welcome to the channel. I'm a blue farm player, but today we're talking about Tymna Thrasios. Post-ban, I believe that this deck has maintained a lot of its power, so I'm trying my hand at Tymna Thrasios. This is also somewhat of a mid-range value deck. Let's talk about how you win really quick. You have a win outlet in your command zone. So with Thrasios, if you have a lot, virtually infinite mana, you can activate Thrasios' ability to scry one, reveal the top card to your library if it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, otherwise draw a card. So essentially you can go through your entire deck, putting all your lands onto the battlefield and then drawing everything else, and then winning through a traditional Thrasios Oracle win. So there are many ways to set that up. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the lands. I know, it sounded like I was about to talk about a sponsor. We are unsponsored, so I would really appreciate it if you would drop a like, comment, subscribe, helps out the channel a ton. Your support is very important to me. Thank you. So, land base. Nothing fancy here. All my dual lands are in other decks. Like I said, I'm just trying this out, but we run some things like Ancient Tomb, Urza's Saga. I love the tutoring ability on that to tutor for some other pieces. But other than that, there's nothing incredibly spicy. Gemstone Caverns, the normal fetches, the normal shock lands, a few things like that. City of Brass, and it's a pretty simple mana base actually. Lots of 4-color lands. I'm trying not to get too greedy with the mana base. We are running a 4-color deck, and I'm running Urza's Saga and Gemstone Caverns, and those are my 2 colorless sources. Of course, Ancient Tomb being the 3rd. So those are lands. Let's talk about some tutors. There are lots and lots of creature tutors in this deck. We're running green, and that's not a color that I traditionally go towards, but I've noticed that the creature tutors are fantastic in that color. You have things like Court of Calling, Worldly Tutor, Eladamri's Call, there's an R in there somewhere, Invasion of Ikoria, Birthing Pod. So you'll notice in a second when I show you some of the win cons, they revolve around creatures, which is really cool to me. It's hard to deal with creatures when there's a lot of things like Dispel running around, or a lot of things like Mental Misstep and some other non-creature removal, non-creature counters, some things like that. So when you're able to stick those creatures that are part of your win line, it feels really good. Finale of Devastation is a great outlet for all of your infinite mana that you'll create. Neoform is a way to tutor on a pinch. Diabolic Intent, another way to tutor. Eldritch Evolution is a creature tutor. I play this in Kinnan as initial cost to cast it. Sacrifice a creature. If you sacrifice Tymna or something, you can go get a 5-drop. So that could be your Seedborn Muse or even your Thrasios Oracle if you need it. Crop rotation. This can tutor for Gaia's Cradle, which is a part of a win line that I'll show you in a little bit. Enlightened Tutor, that can tutor for any of your enchantment value or even the One Ring or some other things like that. This is a fancy version of Tainted Pact. It is a decent tutor. It's pretty much another version of Demonic Consultation in a lot of cases where you can be revealing cards from the top of your library. We don't run any duplicates of cards, so you can pretty much go through your whole deck, exile it all, and then play your Thrasios Oracle, win. The normal Demonic Tutor, of course, I mentioned these, Vampiric Tutor, Summoner's Pact. This Summoner's Pact is really hilarious, and I'm gonna leave this on top and tell you in a second. So in this deck, I run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counterspells. So we're running the good ones: Force of Will, Force Negation, Offer You Can't Refuse, Mindbreak Trap, Mental Misstep, Fierce Guardianship, Swan Song, and Fluster Storm. Just the normal ones. I noticed that we run a lot less counter spells in this deck than I've run in other decks like Tymna Crom, and that's for better or worse. So next I want to talk about some Stax pieces. We run the good ones again: Opposition Agent, Deafening Silence. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. This doesn't hurt us that much. It hurts a lot of other decks though. Volatile Stormdrake to steal some other people's commanders or just kill it. Granite Magistrate, opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. I've had some people scoop to this card if I get it out early. Grafdigger's Cage, it's something that we can tutor up with the Urza's Saga if needed. Creature cards can't enter the battlefield from graveyards or libraries. Players can't cast cards in graveyards or libraries. This turns off a lot of big win lines. Now here's a new one. Charitable Levy. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, put a collection counter on Charitable Levy. Then if there are 3 or more collection counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do draw a card, then you may search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So a little bit of card advantage, also a Staxy thing. Turns off some things like LED Winds, Underworld Breach Lines, stuff like that. Ranger Captain of Eos. Good Stax piece, Silence Effect, it's great. Now, let's talk about removal. I run Abrupt Decay, and this has won me the game multiple times. The text that says the spell can't be countered is oddly relevant. And hilariously, I have had an opponent cast a Mindbreak Trap to exile this spell, and then they won. But most of the time, it's not countered, and I can destroy pretty much whatever I want. There's not a lot of permanents that are mana value 3 or less. Now this is an MDFC land, also new. I'm just trying it out. I don't know how I feel about it yet. When it ETBs, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, destroys those heuristic studies. I love it. Swords to Plowshares, Cyclonic Rift, the usual cEDH stuff. Now here are some value pieces. I mentioned Seedborn Muse earlier, being able to untap all permanents I control, including my lands, during each other player's untap step. If I have Thrasios out, that's just a ton of value, being able to activate Thrasios multiple times around the turn cycle. Colossal Sky Turtle. Now this is a hilarious card. I also run in Kinnan. It has a lot of options. It's a 6/5 for a lot of mana, flying Ward 2, but it has 2 channel abilities that are really hard to deal with. You can discard it, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, or you can pay 2 to discard it, return target creature to its owner's hand. This card just has a lot of modality to it. Training Ground reduces Thrasios' activated ability by 2. That's pretty much what this is there for. Mystic Remora, the One Ring, Lotho. Lotho's been an all-star, being able to crank out a ton of mana. It's been great. I do run Orcish Bowmasters. I've turned off a lot of winds. I've killed a lot of things with Oboe, and I just think it's a good card. I mean, I think everybody knows that it's a great card. Consecrated Sphinx, this isn't an auto include, and it's kind of on the cutting board. It's just a lot of mana, but we do make a lot of mana in this deck, and having that card advantage is fantastic. But we'll see if this stays in the future. Esper Sentinel and Rhystic Study, last 2 value pieces. Now, before I get to the wins, let's talk about some of the ramp. Fanatic of Rhonas is a new one. You can add 4 green, only activate if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. You can eternalize, or it just taps for a green. So I'm gonna put this card to the side for a second, and we'll talk about that in a second. Delighted Halfling, a lot of legendary spells being uncounterable is great. Avacyn's Pilgrim, Elvish Spirit Guide. There's a funny interaction with Summoner's Pact and Elvish Spirit Guide. If you need 1 mana, you can tutor for Elvish Spirit Guide, put it in your hand, exile it, just on a pinch. Bloom Tender, I'll put that to the side too. Noble Hierarch, Selvala, put Selvala to the side. Birds of Paradise, European Swallow. Dark Ritual, Soul Ring, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Arcane Signet, Mana Vault, and Felwar Stone. So the normal mana rocks that a lot of cEDH decks run. So let's, again, put these to the side for a second because they're part of a win line. But let's talk about how we win with this deck. Like I mentioned, the main win line is just create infinite mana and then activate Thrasios as many times as possible, and then cast Thassa's Oracle. We run the classic Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle line. Lame, I know. Displacer Kitten and Teferi. This is a pretty interesting deck. Teferi in itself is a Stax piece, but it's pretty interesting because you can return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and then draw a card. Now, if you have a 0-drop out, you can return that 0-drop artifact to my hand, draw a card, play that 0-drop, activating Displacer Kitten. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent I control. That target would be Teferi, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And Teferi returns with its normal loyalty. You activate the -3 again, returning that 0-drop to your hand, drawing a card. So this can draw out your whole deck. You can cast Thassa's Oracle, yada yada. That's another one line. Lion's Eye Diamond and Auriok Salvashers. I've heard people call this Bomber Man. So you can sacrifice LED to discard your hand and add 3 mana. LED then goes, of course, to the graveyard. Then with the 3 white mana that you just created, you can return target artifact card with CMC 1 or less from your graveyard to your hand, returning LED, casting LED, sacrificing it, creating infinite white, and then using that white to create infinite of any other color that you want. So that's the Bomberman combo. So the next and last combo that I want to talk about is Ashaya and Kyrian Ranger. Now, you need a mana positive dork. Now that can include the Fanatic of Ronus if you have a creature with power 4 or greater that taps for 4 green, or Selvala. Pay green, and as long as you have something that's big enough to get you mana positive of at least 2, then you can use Selvala or Bloom Tinder if you have another color such as blue or anything else, and as long as Bloom Tinder can tap for 2 mana, that's the most important part, you can use this combo. Now, Ashaya says that its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Now, this is the important text line. Non-token creatures you control are forests in addition to their other types. Kyrian Ranger says you can return a forest that you control to its owner's hand, untap target creature. So let's say you have these 3 cards in hand. You can tap Bloom Tinder for 2 mana, a green and 1 of any other color, and then you can activate Kyrian Ranger to return itself, because it is a forest, according to Ashaya's rule text. You can return this to your hand, untapping the Bloom Tinder. Then you can tap the Bloom Tinder for a green and 1 other color to cast your Kyrian Ranger. And then once you've cast the Kyrian Ranger, you can rinse and repeat, returning it back to your hand, untapping Bloom Tinder, getting infinite mana. So this is a really fun little combo line. I'm trying to run some non-traditional combos in here, but I'm sure at some point it'll whittle down to its most finest deck iteration. So if you enjoyed it, again, drop a like and subscribe. I hope this helped, and I hope that you build a deck like Thrasios and Tymna and enjoy Magic the Gathering as much as me.